Now entering its second year, the foreign-funded civil war in Syria continues to drag on, destabilizing the country and causing widespread violence and bloodshed. In their newly released free online ebook, War on Syria, Gateway to World War III, global research contributors Nile Bowie and Tony Cartalucci examine the roots of this conflict and its potential consequences. This is the GRTV Feature Interview with our special guest, Nile Bowie.
Well, if we look at what Turkey has done, and if we look at some of the reports written by the Brookings Institute, such as I believe it's called "Assessing Options for Regime Change in Syria," I think what that describes in that text, it's talking about the need to establish humanitarian corridors and safe havens for rebel groups inside Syria, and that is what I think Turkey has been working towards. Perhaps it's a case of the Erdogan government in Turkey, facing a popular backlash. I know a lot of people in that region of southeastern Turkey. There's been a lot of complaints from MPs, from local people. Who are these rebel fighters that have invaded our neighborhoods and turn the place upside down, basically. So I think there is certainly a push from certain factions of the Turkish government to get those fighters out of Turkish territory. But what I think the issue of the humanitarian corridor, I think that's important because I don't think these rebels, certainly they don't have popular support with the people, obviously. So having this humanitarian corridor will allow them to have this flow of influx of weapons coming in from Turkey, while basically allowing these groups to bolster their activities into Syria. Otherwise, let's just say the flow of weapons stopped. I think it could be over, meaning Assad would crush the rebels within a matter of days, I think there's a finite amount of fighters that you will allow into, that will, keep flowing. So I think after, 20 months now, I think this conflict is likely to draw to a close soon, but in terms of calling when things might return to normality in Syria or what form of government that might be, who knows? That's a very open question. Certainly, I think it's amazing that no one is pointing out the obvious fact that why is another country putting millions of dollars in resources into creating another country's opposition group? That is a very basic question that just does not make sense to me. It does not register to me. And so until people start asking that question, looking, we have this bureaucratic group of exiled Syrians who have been, in Europe for the past 20 years. Most of these guys. I believe the new leader of the Syrian opposition was a local imam who had been in Syria throughout the whole time. So that lends a little bit more credibility to it. But basically, this is the suit and tie face of what are belligerent rebel fighters. And I think if we look at the demographics of these fighters, there are some talks, conflicting reports of, for example, some doctors and aid personnel who've been on the ground who have said, they've either said these are, hardcore Salafist rebels, or, oh, these are secular guys who really want to, work towards democracy and whatever. The truth is that, yes, there are both. There are more progressive-minded people within the Syrian opposition who are actually, fighting on the ground there. But I think based on the press reports, I think we can say, without any real bias, that most of the fighters on the ground are extremists, and they've done radical things, just summary executions, beheadings. Certainly this is inexcusable, and I don't think, no matter how bad Assad is, I don't think any foreign coalition should be supporting rebels who behave in that way. Basically, if we look at what they have contributed, the Israelis have contributed, they have lent credibility to the Syrian opposition. They have supported them. There are numerous reports of Israeli weapons being used by the Free Syrian Army and other rebel fighters. So they have certainly done their part to fuel the momentum of violence against the government in an attempt to topple it. And if we look at what Israel's stake is, and this is in the Golan Heights, the occupied region, Israel is getting 1/3 of their water resources, freshwater resources from that part of Israel, Syria, whatever you want to call it. And under Netanyahu, just recently, since this whole thing has started in Syria, has been doing exploratory, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. He's started the process which will allow Israel to start drilling for oil and gas in the Golan Heights, and this has sort of gone kind of unnoticed, while everything is happening, while everything's going on in Syria. So I think also many analysts have been starting to say this, that we know the Arab Spring was something that was only spontaneous to an extent. Foreign governments have put a lot of pressure and money into building up these movements and to making them a substantial transformative force. So what's interesting is now we're seeing Islamist governments, hostile, increasingly Islamist governments popping up around Israel. And we know Israel has been basically very moved, has moved in a direction where it's settling, pushing the Jewish settlements into disputed areas at an unprecedented rate compared to previous administrations. So what I think could be a possibility is that Israel, being surrounded by hostile states, now has a great pretext to defend itself. And what we're seeing in Gaza over the past 4 or 5 days is I think, a great, ties into that in a big way, and certainly we see Qatar's support for Syrian rebels, and we see Qatar's support for Hamas, so I think what could be happening now is we're seeing this hostile buildup around Israel, and ultimately in the coming months, I mean, we don't know what will happen with the Israeli elections that are coming in 2013, but perhaps we could see Israel using this as a pretext to expand its current, scenario. All right. Well, I think in supporting Assad, as analysts, foreign analysts, I mean, I'm not going to endorse anyone. I have lots of problems with Assad's government and the way he has done things. Personally, I think at the moment, any government, I believe, if they have gangs, armed gangs, terrorizing people and attacking strategic locations, assassinating government officials. I mean, you can't say that. Let's just say, for example, if there was an armed, if Russia armed the Occupy Wall Street, for example, how would the United States react? I mean, not so nice, I can imagine. So I think right now what needs to happen is as I said with you many times, the violence needs to stop, and I think the government has a role in doing that and protecting civilians. The way they're doing that, basically carpet bombing certain areas, residential areas where, perhaps some of these buildings are abandoned, perhaps there are still families living in there, but the way they've gone about it has, I believe, indirectly led to many civilian deaths, which is certainly tragic. At the moment, I think what needs to happen is the resistance needs to be squashed, personally. And I think only then, it's either that or the opposition agrees to put down their weapons, which I don't think is going to happen. It would have happened already if they were planning to do that at any point, I believe. So until there can be a situation where we can sit down, where they can sit down and have dialogue, between these two groups, and perhaps the unity government idea that Kofi Annan basically proposed before he stepped down, I thought was a very interesting idea, and it's a real difficult question to answer. Certainly, the Syrian people have to choose. and they cannot have democracy imposed upon them. But I support the idea of, the establishment of some kind of electoral process which is internationally monitored. But I mean, I'm sure that would be biased in some way, against Assad, obviously. But I certainly think that the current path will lead to a very weak and unmaintainable state if I guess democracy is born through the barrel of a gun, as we've seen in Libya. And that is a great example of how this current U.S. foreign policy of democracy promotion and covert irregular warfare is a disaster.
For more on this story and other breaking news and current events, please go to globalresearch.ca. For more research and analysis by James Corbett, please go to corbettreport.com.